Hello and welcome to this week's Author Spotlight. And as usual, I have another successful published author to join me today to tell us about their highs, the lows, lessons learned, and what they wish they had known before they got started. So without any further ado, please offer a warm welcome to Richard Brook, who's joining us today to tell us all about his book and his writing journey. So welcome, Richard. It's so lovely to have you here today.
Oh, thank you, Cheryl. Good to be here. Thanks for the
invite. So, your book's been published a little while now, hasn't it? So when was it published?
Yeah, it's published in April, and then with a big long prelude. It took quite a long time, I guess, from its inception to when it actually came out. Yes.
So becoming an author for you has been like what?
Well, it's like a massive weight off the mind in some ways, because I felt for years like I was holding this big creative pot of information in my head that I knew had to get born at some point, and I felt like I guess I wasn't fulfilling a significant part of my creative destiny, if you like, if anything, by not getting it done. And so it was a really significant milestone, and I think immediately like my sense of self-confidence went up and things like that as soon as I got it done. And it's just like stepping into, like you said, like an authority position, really. That there's a big significant change when I actually did it. I noticed even with the way I was engaging with people, I run lots of workshops and things at the place where I work, and straight away I could feel that I felt there's a lot more power behind me in terms of, when I was articulating something. So it definitely added a layer of some kind of self-confidence into the picture. Yeah.
And is there anything else about that power when you're presenting and doing your workshops?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny because I often present in the room where I've got the pile of books sitting behind me so people can actually buy them from me in that same space. And it's almost like you've got that, I don't know, that credibility. There's something about having that physical, the time, not just the fact that you know the information, but that you've actually walked the walk and walked through it in order to manifest that into form. And there's something about there's something to do with that as well. There's something to do with the fact that someone has helped you to go through the process to actually manifest the book that shows also that you're serious about what you do. Yeah, there's something in there about that.
And do you, I know from my journey with it as well, do you think that because you have to clarify and distill what is going to go in the book, that's also what gives you that added level of confidence, that you articulate what you know in a different way once you've written the book?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, you put things into a nutshell a lot easier. But for me, there's also something that happens when I write, where I actually feel like I'm getting lots of new insight as it goes. So it's never as if I almost felt like I knew the information before I started to write. A lot of it was actually being clarified through the writing process itself.
I can relate
in some
to
ways.
that.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess because of what I write about, it's not like I'm writing a story, because it's like it's not fictional. So there's also something that I almost feel sometimes like I'm getting the information from somewhere. It's almost like I'm writing the book. I'm opening myself up to tune into information that's out there somehow, and I'm getting a download of it and then writing it out for people. And it's almost like unless you turn that tap open, then maybe you don't get the insights in quite the same way. So I'd say writing the book is like a massive kind of tap opening to allow something through you. Yeah, I guess whether it's non-fiction, fiction, or whatever happens to whatever person, but it was certainly like that for me.
And so when it's an opening of a tap and allowing things to come through you, what happens? Because I'm sure there's lots of authors who'd like to understand what happens just before the opening of that tap.
Well, okay, there's a few things there. So there's firstly, I needed to have the right circumstances to turn the tap on. So there's something for me about needing to create that space for it to happen. And it happened for me in a couple of different times in my life. But there was the first time when I had a significant period of writing. I'd actually been away and I've been meditating for a long time, but it almost felt like there was like a backlog. There was almost like a kind of an internal build-up of something inside of me, which was not, it wasn't like it was that tangible, but I could just feel like there was something bursting to get out of me, and I just needed to create the circumstances around me for it to happen. So the first significant period of time I spent writing, so I'd been away meditating a lot, so I'd had a lot of time and space where I suppose that this force had started to build up even more, and then eventually it started to overspill I guess when I made that initial commitment to sit down that first time to start writing, which actually wasn't the first time I sat down to write, it wasn't because I thought I was going to write a book. I was actually doing a yoga training and I had to write an essay, but it just started to come and it started to come and it started to come. And I actually asked the people at the yoga training, I said, basically, can I give you whatever I've written? And they're like, yeah. So instead of giving them a 2,000 word essay, I gave them 45,000 words on the body-mind connection. And then again, the same thing happened where I then got really busy in my life and I had to sit on top of that for years. And that's where I started to build up a bit of frustration. Because again, I felt like I was sitting on this kind of gold mine, creatively, that I needed to get out there. And it wasn't until I created a bit of space, like maybe 6 or 7 years later, that once more I opened the space and let that sort of information start to come through me again. So I put like 2 or 3 months aside, and then, really create the space for it to happen.
Fabulous. So I think you've kind of expressed this next question in that answer, because I'm going to ask you, why did you write your book, or particularly why did you write this book? It sounds like you had this sort of pressure, this build up. You needed to give birth to it. You knew it had to happen. But is there a sort of a why behind you writing this particular book?
Well, I said the first time it happened, there was no other intent other than that to kind of answer an essay question. And then I kind of shocked myself that once I actually said open that tap and started to write, I just didn't feel like I could stop. And I felt like whatever was coming out of me was that kind of powerful. So I guess that then skips us through to when I decided that it needed to come through as a book. And at that point, it was again because I felt like I had such potent information or knowledge that I felt like it needed to be shared with others. So whereas the first time it was a bit more of a creative expression, when there was the decision, right, you know what, I really need to make this into a book, it was because I just look at what I've got and I see how I help people in my life. And I thought I need to put this into some kind of form, so there's some kind of record of this that makes it more accessible to people. Yeah. And for and maybe actually, and also because I suppose on some level I felt it made me more credible too. I think it's a tremendous adjunct for my business, for my profile, and just that as well. So there's a mixture of a few elements in it, I'd say.
And what has been the impact on your business and your credibility as a result of writing the book?
Well, I said really it's that kind of self-confidence. But I actually, I got the book published in April. And I work facilitating retreats, and so I've been very busy. So pretty much within a few weeks of the book coming out, I've actually been then sort of, engaged very heavily in actually running these retreat programs. So I haven't really had much time since to then layer up on the next level of that. But I suppose there's all the doors that I see that it could open for me. So as well as the self-confidence we touched on, only now over the winter I've got a bit of time and space again. So now I'm looking at doing extra promotion work for the book, and I can see all these different branches that could come off it. I'd love to start maybe doing some articles again for magazines. I did a little bit of stuff back in the day where I was like an holistic expert on an online TV channel, and I'd love to start going off again in some of these directions once more.
Yeah.
So I suppose there's a sense of adventure and excitement it builds, as well as that professional sense of confidence and credibility.
I definitely can relate to that. I think when you're refining your own knowledge and wisdom, but it also gives you a focus of something to talk about and what to hand to people. So let's not keep them in suspense anymore. We had one viewer, they've just come and gone. We've got, this is the name of the book, Definitive Guide to Understanding the Human Experience. So I'll ask you a little bit more about the book in a moment towards the end of the interview. But first of all, what's been the most important thing that you've learned through this process as an author to get from that initial download to deciding it had to be in a form and getting published? What's the most important thing you've learned through that process?
The most important thing I've learned, probably perseverance, and also that I needed help. Like, there was the whole thing had got stuck at some point. And again, like I said, I was sitting on this very frustrated energy that I hadn't managed to give it form. And at that point, I realised I needed help. And I realised that this entire project and everything that's probably going to come next, it's about having some faith and actually calling on other people to have got skills to help me kind of broaden what I've got with this. So perseverance and asking for help and support.
So perseverance and asking for help. So what kind of help and support did you ask for? And what did you need as the author?
Well, I didn't have a clue about how to take it from the process of having this kind of raw material and then getting it into form. And luckily I had this, a mutual friend who mentioned, Karen, and how she could help, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go, and I was trying to research stuff online and what have you, and the amount of time I was putting into that was just crazy too. And at some point, I felt like I needed to reach out to someone and take a step for the value that can bring. Obviously there's money involved, but when I think about the transition of how it helped me to step over that kind of wall between not having the book published and then getting it out there, asking for that help and getting that assistance from Karen with the, just kind of mapping out what the journey would be between where I was then to actually getting the book published. That was, very, obviously very good.
Yeah. It's one of her masterpieces, isn't it? Getting those plans in place. She is a miracle worker with those things. So, what do you wish you'd known before you started?
What do I wish I'd known before I started? Well, that's a tricky one, right? Because if I'd have known some of the stuff before I started, I'm not that the process just keeps going on. I mean, there was something. The one doorway doesn't open until you've already walked through the last one, and there's the whole thing about, I guess, the first significant milestone I always saw in my mind was actually when the book would be published. And I think in some ways I thought, okay, once the book is out there, somehow it's just going to take care of itself and there's all going to be these magical things that happen. Then I realised that now the book's out there, there's a million other things, I have to do. We're trying to get it publicised, to get it marketed, and also that not really to see it in the context, certainly at this stage, of being any kind of money making activity. To be honest with you, I mean, I can really see that might come at some point. But I guess I had this initial preconception that somehow I was going to get the book out there and there'd just be like a massive raft of people who would really want the book, and that, these doors magically open. So it's just that it happens in steps and layers, and I suppose you have to take one thing at a time. But certainly having the book out there, while it gives you the advantages that we spoke about earlier, there's a whole lot of other stuff that then opens up on the other side. And I suppose, that would have been, it wouldn't have stopped me, but it would have just been useful to know, is what I would say.
Yeah. I know that when Karen talks about the journey of the author, it's wanting to market it while you're actually writing it and talking and building that momentum. But of course, when you're busy trying to find space and time and trying to get it channeled and get it out of yourself, it is a case of multitasking. And I don't think it gets any easier as an author. I don't think it gets any easier as a business owner when you're wanting to do two things. But what I do love about Karen, and it sounds like it happens, but it's happening with you, is when you write the right book, then it's aligned with your business, so that when you're marketing the book, you're also marketing you and your business, and therefore it becomes one thing rather than two separate things.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, also part of the reason I haven't really stepped up so much with the marketing, I said partly because I've been busy, but also because there's certain things that are happening on the business side of my life that I'm also waiting to all come together at once, so that when I do start to push the book marketing out there, it fits with some changes that are happening in my business, so that I'm really clear about what I'm offering. Because I'm also aware that when I really start to market the book in a bigger way, I'm probably going to get a lot of traffic, and it's got to be really clear that these people are coming to my site, exactly what I can offer. So there's a whole thing at the minute. I'm thinking about putting an online course with it, and also just how people can also engage with me, where they can find me, what I'm doing. So there's a few other elements, absolutely, which need to come under that umbrella.
Fabulous. And what was your lowest point?
At which point? Like, you mean from the very
from that minute you said, right, I'm going to write a book, right through to the publishing. What would you say was the lowest point, assuming there was one?
Okay, so like I said, I actually wrote the first tranche of it, or whatever, came out in about 2011, and then I didn't really think, okay, I'm going to write the book. I didn't really sit down and think, right, I'm going to make it happen to put it into a book till about 5 years later. But I'd say the lowest point was at sometime around 2018. I didn't have much money. And so again, I was in a situation where I knew I wanted to get this book done, and I didn't actually have enough money sitting in the bank account for me to know that I could even make it happen. And I sat on it for a year. I mean, there's been several points during the entire journey when I've had to sit on it for a little bit. But yeah, that lowest point would probably have been around that time, where some part of me, I think of it as my soul, is kind of looking at what I've got in front of me and just thinking, a mild level of kind of dormancy. I wasn't quite exasperated, but I was just thinking, how am I going to turn this potential into reality?
Yeah.
And then luckily things started to pick up in terms of my income and things like that a year and a half later, and then I could start to get the ball rolling again.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I like about Karen's Smart Author system, and it does depend when you join or when you find her, but there is a way of actually making money before you publish your book so that you can actually get your publishing funded. And so many authors do get onto that, keep it very quiet, stay with themselves, don't ask for help, and go through all of that pain on their own. And actually, if they'd got some support, they probably could have got some funding up the front end of that process and taken some of that pressure off. So it's great that you're sharing that, because I think it's a common mistake that many authors make. They look at the publishing costs or even look at the book mentoring costs and put it off because of the money, when actually there are techniques out there where you could actually start selling the book and programs off the back of it before you've even published it.
I would have loved to have kind of, I guess, have had things integrated enough at that point and have maybe another layer to my offering, where there was a course or a program that someone could have got. But, I'm going to have to build something in now, I think, that sits alongside that at some point. When I get time anyway.
I guess it goes back to what you said though before. It is a process. It is step by step. There is iterations, and some people will focus on the one end and some other people focus at the other, but we all eventually get there as long as you know what the whole process is. And so the great thing for you is that you've got that opportunity now, haven't you, I can almost see you getting excited about all those doors that are possibly could open, and now the case of giving yourself space and time to work out which ones you want to take your book through.
And in what order?
So I highly recommend you do the same as you did before then, and give yourself some time and space. Because the same process will be required, because it can get very exciting the other side. But today, what's been your biggest success with the book?
What's been the biggest success? If anything, just the launch of it, just the launch and the reaction. Even like when I stuck it on Facebook for the very first time, and stuck a picture on there, me holding the book up, just the number of people who responded and related to that. And, it's clearly something that people felt I was sort of cut out to do, the people who'd been around me. And it's just, I guess, some of the good feedback I got from people that I'd actually done it. And then every time someone buys one, I mean, luckily I'm in a position, like I said, I work in a retreat centre, I actually sell the book. And so I guess every time someone buys one, I feel like someone's walking away with, up until the time I wrote the book, whatever, pretty much every bit of significant knowledge I've got that I feel helps people with their life. They're walking away with that, like wrapped up in a parcel and taking it away with them. And so I guess every time someone buys one, it just brings some sense of, warmth to me,
Fabulous. Let's just pop the link on the bottom as you tell us a little bit about your book then. So, and do you have a copy with you to show us on the screen? Because I didn't set you up to say bring one to the recording.
I think I've actually got one in here. Just hang on.
Please go and get it. Please do. It's, let's show people what it actually looks like. They can obviously get the link. I can place it in the comments as well.
Okay, so I'm actually in the library at the retreat centre I work, and so we've got a copy that's in there for people to read. So it's got a little sticker on the front telling people not to take it away.
It's
so
a clinic
copy. The library. But yeah, this is,
so it's called
to the rooms.
Understanding Human Nature: A User's Guide to Life. Yeah. So tell us about who's this book for, and what sort of things would they be curious about, interested in? What would bring someone to your book?
So, all the way through the journey of getting the book published with the different people I spoke to around that, they would often say that same thing, who's it for? And I think initially I was actually pretty naive, and because in some ways I think it's for everyone. But I really do now understand why people ask that question so much, like Karen and the editors, and just always like, who's it for? And you do have to be quite clear. So because I've got such a strong holistic background, I think anyone who's pushed open the door into any kind of holistic modality or practice, whether it's just going to yoga or going and having different therapies, even if they go to see a massage therapist, whatever, just someone who's pushed open some kind of self-awareness, it's really handy for them. Not just because I use, like, all the systems of explanation in the book use holistic systems, whether it's Chinese medicine or the chakra system, or there's a bit of sort of, psychology thing in there too, and talking about the soul a lot. So I guess they might already be familiar with those systems, but also that then, like, it shows that they're probably at a commensurate level of understanding that they're actually going to get something from the book. So anyone who's opened the door to wanting to find out more about how the mechanics of how life works, like I said, we're a moving cog, or we're a cog within this big moving mass of patterns and energy which form our life. And this book just gives you different ways of understanding what some of those patterns are, whether it's the patterns that occur in your relationship, whether it's the patterns that occur in your thoughts, whether it's actually things that are happening in your physiology. It's just a way of stripping down the engine, opening up the engine and understanding how some of the moving parts work. Because, I gave this analogy, when we were sort of chatting earlier about how it's, if you've got a motorbike, and it breaks down, then, sometimes you can take it to someone else to fix it, or, you can try fiddling about with it. But it's really handy if you can kind of take it apart sometimes yourself, because in your life, inevitably things are going to go wrong. The motorbike engine might all work all the way through from the very start to the end of the whole time you've got it. But at some point in your life, things happen that are difficult. And then it's really good to actually be able to strip it down and understand why it's actually happening. So I guess it gives you a map and a diagram and a set of concepts that help you to understand the human experience you're having.
Fabulous. I know that I will be going to check out that link. Unfortunately, I need to make sure I create some space to read some of these books, because the only thing I do in all these interviews, I get to hear about lots of amazing books, but I do now to make sure I have time to actually read them. So without any further ado, Richard, thank you so much for joining us today. Is there anything else you want to share with the viewers before we finish today's interview? Otherwise, we will call it a day and we'll wrap the show up.
I think just if you're sitting on that burning desire to kind of get a book out there, to ask for help and support, and have some confidence and faith and get it done.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll be with you again in a moment in the studio. See you soon.
All right.
So without any further ado, that's this week's Author Spotlight. So if you are thinking about writing a book, please do check out Librotas. Talked about Karen Williams, because I know she's got the next Smart Author system starting in March. So if you want to make sure, as Richard said, to get that book out of you this year, and you want to make sure that this is the year that your book gets published, do check out Karen's website this week. And without any further ado, I'll see you again next week for next week's show.